I still remember the exact moment the Christmas lights on our tree stopped feeling like hope and started feeling like a lie. It was Christmas Eve, 2024, and the living room smelled of cinnamon from the cookies I'd baked that morning. The ones Sarah used to steal straight from the cooling rack when she was little. The television flickered with some old holiday movie neither of us was watching. My daughter sat across from me on the couch, knees tucked under her, phone in her lap like always. She was 28, but at that moment, with the colored lights reflecting in her eyes, she looked 12 again. I reached for the remote to turn the volume down, and that's when I asked the question I'd been swallowing for weeks. Sarah, honey, any word on the job front? She didn't look up right away. Just thumbed at her screen, the soft glow painting her face blue. Then, quiet as snowfall. Still hunting, Mom. It's tough out there. I nodded like I always did. Smiled like I always did. Said, you'll find something soon, baby. You're so smart, like I always did. But something in her voice, thin, rehearsed, snagged on the edge of my heart. I let it go. It was Christmas. We had ham in the oven, presents under the tree, and her father's old stocking still hung by the fireplace even though he'd been gone for 6 years. Some things you don't poke at on Christmas Eve. But 3 days later, when CNN started their special report, I learned just how good my daughter had gotten at lying. Let me take you back a little. Before the lights went dim, before the truth cracked open like an egg on the kitchen floor. My name is Linda Carter. I'm 62 years old, a widow, a retired school librarian from a small town in Ohio where everybody knows your name and your mama's name and probably your cholesterol level too. I raised Sarah alone after Tom's heart attack in 2018. Just the two of us in the little blue house on Maple Street with the creaky porch swing and the rose bushes that bloom pink every June. Sarah was always my quiet one. Not shy, quiet. The kind of child who listened more than she spoke, who noticed when the teacher's voice cracked, or when I forgot to eat dinner because I was grading papers. She graduated with honors in communications from Ohio State, moved to Chicago for a marketing job at a startup, and for a while, everything was golden. She'd call every Sunday, send photos of the lakefront, talk about campaigns and client dinners and how she was this close to a promotion. I'd beam into the phone like a fool, telling all the ladies at the book club how my girl was taking the city by storm. Then the layoffs came. 23. The startup folded. Sarah came home for a weekend with a duffel bag and red eyes and said she needed a minute to breathe. I made up the guest room, stocked the fridge with her favorite peach yogurt, and told her she could stay as long as she needed. No rush, honey. The world's not going anywhere. She stayed for 6 months. Mornings, she'd pad into the kitchen in my old bathrobe, hair in a messy knot, and I'd have coffee ready. She'd sit at the table scrolling job boards, sighing at rejection emails, sending out applications like paper airplanes into the wind. I'd rub her back and say, something'll stick. Afternoons, she'd go for runs or meet old high school friends at the diner. Evenings, we'd cook together, spaghetti with too much garlic, or watch those British baking shows and argue over who should have been eliminated. It felt like a soft pause, a healing. I told myself this was temporary. My daughter was regrouping. She'd fly again, but there were small things. Little shadows I stepped over without looking down, like how her laptop was always closed when I walked into the room. How she'd angle her phone away when texting at the dinner table. How she started dressing sharper on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Blazers and heels when she said she was just going to the library to apply in peace. I'd tease her. You look like you're heading to a board meeting, not a coffee shop, and she'd laugh it off, twirl once, say, gotta look the part. Mom, fake it till you make it. I wanted to believe her. God help me, I did. The first real crack came in October. I was in the laundry room folding her clothes, something I still did without thinking, and her blazer slipped off the pile. A business card fluttered out. Thick cream stock, embossed gold lettering, Sarah E. Carter, Senior Communications Director, Apex Media Group, Chicago. My stomach did a slow flip. Apex was huge, national. I'd seen their ads during football games. I held the card between my fingers like it might burn me, then slipped it back into the pocket before she came home. That night at dinner, I asked casually, "Any callbacks from the big firms?" She shook her head, chewed her salad, said, "Nothing yet. But I'm hopeful. Hopeful." The word sat in my mouth like a stone. I didn't sleep that night. Lay in the dark, listening to the house settle. Tom's side of the bed still cold after all these years. I told myself there were 100 reasons for a business card. Maybe she'd made them herself for networking. Maybe it was a gift from a friend. Maybe. By morning, I'd buried it. Mothers protect their children's dignity, even from themselves. Thanksgiving came and went. She helped me bake the turkey, set the table with the good china, and laughed when Uncle Ray spilled gravy on his tie. She wore jeans and a sweater, no blazer in sight, normal, safe. I let the card fade into the back of my mind like an old grocery list. Then December hit, and with it, the pressure of Christmas. Sarah started disappearing for full days. "Job fair in Columbus," she'd say, kissing my cheek on her way out. Or, "Meeting a recruiter for coffee." She'd come home after dark, cheeks flushed from the cold, carrying takeout because she didn't want me cooking after a long day. I'd thank her, hang her coat, notice the faint scent of expensive perfume that wasn't mine or hers from high school. I began to watch her more closely. Not spying, watching. The way her fingers flew over her phone when she thought I was in the other room. The way she'd excuse herself to take calls on the porch, voice low, laughing in a tone I hadn't heard since college. The way she stopped talking about interviews altogether, like the topic had simply evaporated. One night, I woke at 3 a.m. to the glow of light under her bedroom door. I crept down the hall in my slippers, heart thumping too loud. Through the crack, I saw her at the desk, headset on, speaking into a microphone. "Yes, Mr. Lang, I'll have the revised deck for you by noon. And please, call me Sarah." Professional? Confidence. Alive in a way she hadn't been in my kitchen for months. I backed away before she saw me, closed my door, and sat on the edge of my bed until dawn, wondering what kind of mother doesn't recognize her own child's voice. Christmas Eve arrived like a held breath. I'd wrapped her gifts weeks ago, a new coat, a necklace with a tiny book charm, and a card that said, "To my brilliant girl, the world is waiting." She'd wrapped mine too, beautifully, with curling ribbon. We opened one present each at midnight, tradition since she was 5. She gave me a leather-bound journal. "For your stories, Mom," she said, eyes shining. "You should write them down." I hugged her tight, smelled her shampoo, and for a moment, everything was perfect. The next morning, I made pancakes. She helped flip them, burning the first batch like always. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the tile. I left it there, the screen still glowing, and walked to the living room window. Snow had started again, soft and indifferent. I watched it fall until I heard her key in the lock. She came in smelling of cold air and department store perfume, cheeks pink, carrying a shopping bag that probably held nothing. "Mission accomplished," she sang, kicking off her boots. They took the blouse, no questions. She looked at me, smile faltering. "Mom, you okay?" I couldn't speak. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. She followed my gaze to the phone on the floor, screen now dark. Her face changed, slow, like ice spreading across a pond. "Mom?" "Turn on the TV, Sarah." She didn't move. The shopping bag slid from her arm and hit the rug with a soft thud. "Channel 5, I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, calm, flat. "CNN, now." She walked past me, slow, and picked up the remote. The screen woke to a commercial for life insurance. Then the anchor, crisp suit, grave face. Federal raid on Apex Media Group's Chicago headquarters earlier today. Sources confirm at least 4 executives in custody, with more arrests expected. Among those named in the indictment is Sarah Carter, who allegedly funneled client retainers into offshore accounts over a 14-month period. The room tilted. I gripped the back of the armchair to stay upright. Sarah stood frozen, remote dangling from her hand. On screen, they cut to file footage. Some corporate gala last spring. And there she was. My daughter. in a navy gown I'd never seen, arm linked with a man twice her age, both of them smiling like they'd won the lottery. I found my voice. "Turn it off," she did. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. I turned to her. 14 months? Her lips parted, but nothing came out. 14 months, I repeated, tasting each syllable. "You've been working there since October of last year?" She sank onto the couch, knees together like a child sent to the principal. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain?" The word cracked like a branch under snow. "You sat at my table every night. You let me make you peanut butter toast and fold your laundry and pray for you to find a job. You let me believe you were broken. I was going to tell you." "When?" I stepped closer. "After the indictment? After the trial? Or were you just going to disappear one day with a duffel bag full of cash and leave me wondering if you'd been kidnapped?" Tears tracked down her cheeks, but I couldn't feel sorry yet. Not with the anchor's voice still echoing in my skull. "I didn't steal anything," she whispered. "I swear, I moved numbers. They said it was temporary. Bridge financing. I thought—" She stopped, swallowed. "I thought I was helping the company stay afloat." I laughed then, a sound I didn't recognize. $42 million, Sarah. That's not a bridge. That's the Golden Gate." She dropped her face into her hands. Her shoulders shook, but no sound came out. I stood over her, chest heaving, every heartbeat a question. How did I miss this? How did I raise a child capable of this? How do you love someone and not know them at all? Finally, I sat on the coffee table across from her, close enough to see the mascara smudges, the tiny freckle on her eyelid she'd had since birth. "Look at me," she did. Eyes swollen, lips trembling. "Start from the beginning." "No more lies!" She took a shuddering breath. After the startup folded, I was lost. I applied everywhere. Nothing. Then one night I'm at this networking thing and this guy, Richard Lang, VP at Apex, buys me a drink. Says they're looking for someone with my exact skill set. Offers me the job on the spot. 6 figures, benefits, apartment allowance. She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her coat. I thought it was a miracle. I stayed quiet. Let her talk. The first month was legit. Press releases, client pitches. Then Richard starts asking me to reallocate funds. Small stuff. 5 grand here, 10 there. Said it was industry standard. Everyone did it. I was scared to lose the job, Mom. Rent in Chicago, you know how it is. I kept thinking, next month it'll stop. She laughed, bitter. It never stopped. It got bigger. Offshore accounts, shell companies. I became the one who made it look clean. I closed my eyes. Saw her at 16, practicing her valedictorian speech in the mirror. Saw her at 8, crying because she'd accidentally killed a goldfish. Same girl, different choices. Why come home? I asked. Why not stay in Chicago and ride it out? She looked at me like I'd asked why the sky was blue. Because I was scared. The auditors were circling. Richard said to lay low, work remote. I thought if I came home, I could figure out a way out. Tell you slowly. Get a lawyer. Her voice cracked. I didn't want you to see me like this. Like what? I said softly. Successful? Or a criminal? She flinched. The doorbell rang. We both jumped. Through the frosted glass, I saw red and blue lights pulsing against the snow. Sarah's face went white. They're here. I stood on legs that didn't feel like mine and opened the door. 2 detectives, 1 woman with kind eyes, 1 man with none. Badges glinted under the porch light. Ma'am, we're looking for Sarah Carter. I stepped aside. She's right here. Sarah rose slowly, hands already out like she'd practiced this moment in nightmares. The woman cuffed her gently, reading right in a voice that sounded almost apologetic. Sarah didn't resist. She looked back at me once, eyes pleading, but I had no words left to give. As they led her down the walk, neighbors' curtains twitched. Mrs. Henderson from across the street stood on her porch in her robe, mouth open. I closed the door before anyone could speak. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes. Hours. The house smelled of pine and burnt-out candles. I walked to the kitchen, picked up Sarah's phone from the floor. The screen had cracked in the fall. I set it on the charger like it still mattered. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I called my sister, Ruth. She answered on the second ring. Linda, Mary, belated. They just took Sarah, I said. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. FBI, embezzlement, CNN's got it. Silence. Then Ruth, steady as ever. I'm on my way. While I waited, I made tea. The mundane act grounded me, hands moving through muscle memory, kettle whistling, chamomile blooming dark in the cup. Ruth arrived in under 20 minutes, snow in her hair, arms open. I let her hold me until the tears finally came. We sat at the kitchen table like we had 100 times after Tom died. She listened while I told her everything, the business card, the 3 a.m. calls, the Christmas lie. When I finished, she squeezed my hand. What now, Lynn? I don't know, I whispered. She's my daughter. She's also a grown woman who made choices, Ruth said gently. You don't have to fix this one. But I was already thinking of lawyers, of bail, of the look on Sarah's face when the cuffs clicked shut. I was thinking of the rose bushes outside, dormant under snow, waiting for spring they might not deserve. Ruth stayed the night. We didn't sleep. At dawn, I stood at the window and watched the street wake up. Someone had shoveled my walk, probably Mr. Patel from next door. Life going on, indifferent. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, Mrs. Carter? This is Agent Marcos with the FBI. Your daughter asked me to call. She wants you to know she's cooperating fully, and she's sorry. I closed my eyes. Tell her I love her, I said. And telling her love isn't enough anymore. I hung up before he could reply. Ruth made eggs. I ate 3 bites. Then I opened Sarah's bedroom door for the first time since the arrest. The bed was unmade, her laptop still on the desk. I sat in her chair, opened the lid. Password: the date Tom died. Of course. The desktop was a grid of spreadsheets. I clicked one. Numbers. So many numbers. Transfers, dates, account codes. My librarian brain recognized patterns even if I didn't understand the language. I closed it. Opened her email, hundreds of messages. Some from Richard Lang, terse, demanding. Others from colleagues, panicked. And one, sent yesterday. Subject line. If anything happens. I opened it. Mom, if you're reading this, I messed up. I'm sorry. I kept thinking I could stop it, but I was in too deep. There's a flash drive in the lining of my red suitcase. Everything's on it. Give it to the police. Tell them I'm done running. I love you. SI found the suitcase in the closet, slit the lining with kitchen scissors. The drive was tiny silver. I held it in my palm like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Ruth watched from the doorway. You gonna do it? I nodded. She asked me to. Then let's go. We drove to the federal building in Columbus, snow squeaking under the... Will it help her? I asked. It'll help the case, he said. Can't promise more than that. I understood. Justice doesn't bargain. On the way home, Ruth stopped at the grocery. I waited in the car, watching families load trunks with diapers and detergent, normal life. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Sarah's number, probably the one call inmates get. I'm okay. I love you. I'm so sorry, I typed back. I love you too. We'll talk when you're ready. Then I turned the phone face down and cried until Ruth came back with milk and bread and the quiet kindness only sisters know how to give. That night, I took down the Christmas tree alone. Ornaments back in their boxes, lights coiled tight. I left Sarah's stocking on the mantel. Some things you're not ready to pack away. The news cycle moved on. Apex, crypto crash, some senator's scandal. Sarah's name faded from the crawl. But not from Maple Street. Not from my heart. People started calling, reporters, old students, the pastor. I let the machine take them. Ruth fielded the church ladies with lemon bars and pity casseroles. I nodded, thanked them, and ate nothing. January came bitter. I walked every morning, past houses with fresh wreaths still up, past the diner where Sarah used to steal fries off my plate. I walked until my fingers went numb and my thoughts stopped screaming. One afternoon, I found myself at the library where I'd worked for 30 years. The new head librarian, Jenna, barely 30, waved me in. "We miss you, Mrs. C. Story time's not the same." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Maybe I'll come read to the kids next week." She squeezed my arm. "We'd love that, small steps. That's how you rebuild when the foundation cracks." Sarah's arraignment was set for February. Her public defender called a young man named Daniel with a voice like warm tea. "She's pleading guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. Cooperation's buying her a reduced sentence, maybe 3 to 5. 3 to 5 years. I wrote it on the calendar in pencil, like it might erase itself. I visited her once before the hearing, in a room that smelled of bleach and old coffee. She wore orange, hair in a braid, no makeup. She looked 12 again. We sat across from each other, phones to our ears through the glass. "I'm sorry." "Mom," she said at first thing. "I know. I thought I was being smart, ambitious. I didn't see the cliff until I was over it." I nodded. "Pride's a quiet thief," she smiled, sad. "You always said that." We talked for 20 minutes. About Tom, about the rose bushes, about whether prison had books. When the guard signaled time, she pressed her palm to the glass. "I matched it with mine. Right to me?" she asked. "Every week," I promised. Driving home, I stopped at the cemetery. Tom's stone was dusted with snow. I brushed it off, traced the letters of his name. "I tried, Tom," I whispered. I really tried. The wind answered, soft, like forgiveness. Spring came early that year. The rose bushes budded pink despite everything. I pruned them myself, hands in the dirt, thorns drawing blood I didn't feel. Ruth helped me paint the porch swing a fresh blue. I started reading to the kids at the library on Thursdays, voices from favorite books filling the story corner where Sarah once fell asleep during Dr. Seuss. The town gossip died down. People still nodded at the grocery, but the stares stopped. I became Linda again, not that poor woman whose daughter... Sarah's letters arrived like clockwork. Long looping handwriting on prison stationery. She wrote about the library cart, about a watercolor class, about a roommate who snored like a freight train. She wrote apologies in the margins, small ones, like she was afraid to take up too much space. I wrote back about the garden, about Jenna's new baby, about how the swing creaked less after the paint job. I never mentioned the nights I still woke at 3 a.m., reaching for a child who wasn't there. In May, the sentence came down, 4 years, eligible for parole in 2. I baked a chocolate cake anyway. Ruth and I ate it on the porch, watching fireflies blink on. "Think she'll come home after?" Ruth asked. I licked the frosting from my thumb. "If she wants to." "Door's open, but she'll have to knock," Summer ripened. I planted tomatoes in the backyard, the kind Sarah used to eat warm off the vine. I joined a grief group at church, not for Tom anymore, but for the living. We met in the basement, folding chairs in a circle, passing Kleenex like communion. I learned I wasn't the only mother carrying a child-shaped hole. Fall again. The leaves turned the color of apologies. Sarah's first parole hearing loomed. Daniel called with updates, cautious hope in his voice. I hung up and walked to the cemetery, habit now, and told Tom the news. A groundskeeper nodded at me like an old friend. One October morning, the phone rang at 7:12 a.m. I was making coffee, still in my robe. Unknown number. My heart knew before my head, Mom. Her voice, thin, crackling over the line. "They let me out," she said. "Good behavior. Cooperation. I'm at the bus station in Columbus." "I didn't know if..." "I'll be there in 40 minutes, I said. I drove with the windows down, autumn air whipping my hair. The station smelled of diesel and burnt pretzels. She stood near the benches, small in jeans and a gray hoodie, hair shorter, carrying one duffel bag. When she saw me, she dropped it and ran. We met halfway. She smelled like prison soap and bus exhaust and my little girl. I held her so tight I felt her ribs. "I'm sorry," she whispered into my shoulder. "I know," I said. "Come home." The drive back was quiet. She stared out the window at fields turning gold. "The house looks the same," she said as we pulled onto Maple. "Some things should," I replied. I'd left the porch light on. Ruth had stocked the fridge. The swing creaked a welcome. Sarah stepped inside, slow, like she was testing the floor for traps. She touched the stocking still on the mantel, fingers lingering on the embroidered S. "I kept it," I said. She nodded, tears falling without sound. "We made spaghetti that night. Too much garlic, like always." She burned the bread. I let her. We ate at the table, knees bumping under it like when she was 10. Afterwards, she did the dishes without being asked. I dried. Later, I found her on the porch swing wrapped in Tom's old Afghan. I sat beside her. The stars were sharp, the way they get after frost. "I start community service next week," she said. "Library outreach program. Reading to kids in juvenile detention." I smiled into the dark. Full circle. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I have to earn trust again. Yours, everyone's, I know that." "You will," I said. One book at a time, we swung in silence, the chain singing its old song. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The roses had gone dormant, but I could smell next year's blooms already. Healing isn't a line, straight and clean. It's a circle, slow, overlapping. Sometimes you pass the same wound twice before it scars. But scars hold. They remind you what was broken and how it mended. Sarah moved into the guest room, took the library job Jenna offered, paid rent even though I told her not to. She saved for an apartment, attended meetings, wrote apologies to people she'd never met but whose retirement funds she'd touched. Some wrote back. Most didn't. She carried their silence like a backpack, but she kept walking. I kept reading to the kids on Thursdays. Sometimes Sarah came, sat in the back, smiling when I did the dragon voice. The children didn't know her story. They just knew she brought the best snacks. One evening, a year almost to the day she came home, we planted tulips along the front walk. Red ones. She knelt in the dirt, hands black with soil, and said, "I used to think success was a title on a business card. Now I think it's this. Dirt under my nails. You don't flinch when I touch your arm." I handed her another bulb. "Plant it deep. Roots need room to forgive." She laughed, the sound light, real. "You should write that down, Mom, for your journal." I did later. Page after page. Not just the pain, but the after. The slow bloom. Sometimes people ask how I forgave her. I tell them forgiveness isn't a moment. It's 1,000 small ones, choosing to set the table for 2 instead of 1. Choosing to answer the phone at 3 a.m. Choosing to believe a person can change even when the evidence is stacked against them. Sarah still has nightmares. So do I. But we talk about them over coffee now. No secrets, no closed laptops. The porch swing holds both our weights without creaking too loud. And every Christmas we hang 2 stockings. Hers is a little frayed at the toe, but it's there. Some things you don't pack away. I learned that love isn't blind. It sees everything, the ugly, the broken, the lies, and chooses to stay anyway. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love? What was the hardest part, and what kept you going? Tell me in the comments. And if this story touched you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear that second chances aren't fairy tales. They're just Tuesdays with dirt under your nails and hope in your pocket. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one. I still keep that cracked phone in a drawer upstairs, screen spider-webbed like a tiny map of every lie it carried. Some nights I take it out, run my thumb over the fracture, and remember how heavy a secret can feel in a mother's hand. The phone never lights up anymore, but the memory does, steady as the porch light I leave on. She's 30 now. Has her own apartment above the bakery on Elm, the one that smells of yeast and cinnamon every morning. She walks to work, saves for a car, still burns toast when she tries to cook for herself. Some things don't change, others do. She calls every Sunday at 6 sharp, same as when she was in Chicago living a life I didn't know. Only now the stories are small and true. The toddler who learned to say again after story time, the fine she paid for returning a book late, the way the sunrise looks different from her fire escape. I listen, I laugh. I tell her about the roses that came back stronger after the hard prune. We don't talk about the 4 years she lost, or the 42 million she helped disappear, or the nights I cried into Tom's pillow. We don't need to. The space between us is stitched with quieter threads now. Honesty, patience, the slow work of hands that know how to hold without gripping too tight. People still recognize her in town. Some nod politely, some cross the street. She notices. I notice her noticing. But she keeps her chin up, returns the books to their shelves, reads to the children with the same gentle voice she used to read me bedtime stories when I was the one who couldn't sleep. Redemption isn't loud. It's the click of a cartwheel down a prison corridor, the hush of pages turning in a room full of kids who only care that the dragon gets his happy ending. I turned 64 last month. Ruth threw me a party in the backyard, paper lanterns and store-bought cake because neither of us bakes like we used to. Sarah gave me a new journal, leather the color of wet sand, and inside the front cover she'd written in her careful script, "For the stories you still haven't told. Thank you for teaching me that roots can grow through concrete. Love always." "Your girl?" I cried in the bathroom so no one would see. Then I came out, cut the cake, and let the kids smear frosting on my cheeks like war paint. Here's what I know now. What I wish I'd known at 28 when I was raising her alone and terrified of every shadow. Love is not the absence of fracture. It's the choice to keep the pieces in the same bowl. So I ask you quietly, the way I ask myself when the house is still and the snow starts to fall again. Have you ever held someone's brokenness in your hands and decided it was still worth the wait? What did it cost you? What did it give you back? Leave your answer below if you want. No judgment here, only listening. And if this story stirred something in you, pass it along to the mother who's waiting up, the daughter who's afraid to come home, the friend who thinks forgiveness